We're still waiting for some people. Where's the other, I guess we have quorum. We have quorum. I have a motion moved by Martin and Ian Rabbits that council reconvene in open session at 5:00 p.m. on my watch. All those in favor? That is carried. So we are moving on to presentations. The first one that I have is Tracy Flattery, Wilmot OR Code Inc., Re 2018 Homelessness Enumeration Report. Can you come to the podium?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually Tricia Givens, Program Manager of Housing Services. Tracy is the consultant that did the enumeration project, and she'll be presenting the findings and will be available after to answer any questions.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Thanks very much for your time. We wanted to provide you with a really quick overview of the Haldeman Norfolk homeless count. Those of you who may not have been with council at the time, the homeless enumeration process actually came down through the provincial government as part of a directive in terms of every service manager throughout the province being requested to actually complete a homeless enumeration. And so the Haldeman Norfolk inaugural homeless count actually took place in May of 2018. When we sort of look at the process for this, during the 2017-2018 process, OrgCode, which is the company that I'm attached to, was actually working with 8 different communities across Ontario, assisting them in developing the most appropriate methodology. So we are a Canadian company. We work throughout North America in terms of helping communities address homelessness with the goal of preventing and ending chronic homelessness. When we look at the general statistics around the homeless count, the recognition being that during the week-long registry week here in Haldeman Norfolk County, we actually engaged well over 600 individuals. There were 84 volunteers that were trained, so that encompassed community members, agency staff out in the community, as well as Norfolk County staff, and 42 different locations where both either street-based or agency-based enumeration occurred, and it happened throughout the week. In terms of looking at the numbers, for Haldeman Norfolk County, there were actually 79 individuals that were identified as experiencing homelessness at that particular time. When we sort of look at the statistics, the recognition being that of those 79, 54 were actually engaged in Norfolk County and 25 in Haldeman County. In the middle of your screen there, you will see the gender identity, the breakdown of male, female, predominantly, as we see in most Canadian communities, the population of people experiencing homelessness is still more male than female, although at one time it would have been closer to a 65-35 split. And now we have males that represented 52% of the individuals that were experiencing homelessness, and females are at 43%. When we think about the age of individuals and family members that were surveyed during this week-long event in May of 2018, the ages ranged from 18 years of age to 72 years of age. And so you'll see the vast majority of people, 58 people, were actually between the ages of 25 and 54. In looking at some of the other important information, we always sort of look at what was the type of homelessness that people experienced. So homelessness will look a little bit different as we go from community to community, but for the most part, generally what we're seeing is that in terms of the local area, you'll have a large percentage of individuals and families that are experiencing what we refer to as hidden homelessness, meaning they do not have their own location that's safe and appropriate for them to be in, and they're therefore relying on other individuals, other family members on a temporary basis so that they can actually be safe. When we think about the individuals that were accessing the emergency housing program, 42% of the individuals that were surveyed during that week-long event were actually accessing sheltered opportunities through that emergency housing program. And there was 8% of the individuals that were actually experiencing unsheltered homelessness, meaning that they are actually living in places, whether it's parks or under bridges, places not meant for human habitation, may also be in a vehicle. When we sort of experience and look at what was the scenario around income, oftentimes there's the recognition being that people who are experiencing homelessness generally will indeed have a very tight connection to economic poverty. And so one of the key factors as it relates to the experience of homelessness locally is, of course, the lack of affordable housing as well as insufficient income to make ends meet. So 37% of the individuals that were surveyed are actually receiving Ontario Works, and an additional 26% are on some form of disability benefits, whether that's ODSP or CPP. The vast majority of the 79 people that were actually interviewed are receiving just one source of income. So obviously economic poverty is indeed something that's causing people to get stuck in homelessness. The other components around looking at the situation and the experience of homelessness locally, it becomes really important for us to look at the health of people that are experiencing housing instability and homelessness. And interestingly for us, one of the key findings as it relates to Norfolk and Haldimand counties is the realization that people who are indeed living in homelessness are quite unwell. So if we examine 4 of the health conditions that are oftentimes enumerated most frequently in these types of point-in-time counts, 72% of the individuals that are currently experiencing homelessness actually self-identified mental health issues. So a huge requirement for improved mental health access to services. The other components, 58% identified that substance use was actually an issue that they were struggling with. 47% actually have a medical condition that is contributing to them being stuck in homelessness. And an additional 41% of them actually have a physical disability and currently experiencing homelessness. If we look at beyond the disabling conditions that might be impacting people's ability to return to a state of being housed, we oftentimes think that individuals who are experiencing homelessness aren't necessarily costing our communities a lot of money. So if we sort of think about not having a home to be able to be safely housed in, the recognition being that if we look at really understanding how individuals that are not safely and appropriately housed, how do they have these medical conditions addressed? They, of course, have to rely on very expensive emergency services. So one of the questions that we asked during the homeless enumeration was, over the past 6 months, how many times had they accessed the emergency department? How many times had they accessed ambulance rides or needed to be hospitalized? And so over the past 6 months, there were 144 ED visits, 41 different ambulance rides, and 19 hospitalizations, and we were not even incorporating any involvement in terms of the police, which would increase the cost. But in the 6 months, just looking at those 3 scenarios, it was over $220,000. So really important that we look at the magnitude and the scope of homelessness and the impact that it's having on your community. On average, people in the area that experienced homelessness experienced 170 days of homelessness over the past year. When we sort of examine the overall cumulative impact, so of the 79 people, cumulatively there was 12,878 days of homelessness experienced by local residents. And oftentimes councils are really interested in knowing, are these folks actually from here, or are they, on their way to some other community? Did they come here because the services are so great? Once again, as we see in every community across Canada, the vast majority of people that are enumerated and experiencing homelessness locally actually live here long term. So they're not just going through on their way to somewhere else. The other key factor that becomes extremely important is our understanding of how long people have been stuck in homelessness. So what you'll see here on the left-hand side of the screen is the recognition being that the federal government here in Canada has defined what creates scenarios where people have experienced chronic homelessness, meaning they've been homeless for so long that being homeless feels normal. They've learned how to survive in that scenario, whereas being housed may feel very abnormal. Throughout the Haldeman-Norfolk County enumeration, what we actually discovered was that 47% of individuals and family members that were surveyed that week actually met the definition of chronic homelessness. So that's quite high for a community in an area the size of yours, recognizing the fact that people are getting stuck in homelessness much longer than we would like to see. The other piece is that 20% of your individuals experienced episodic homelessness. And what that actually means is that over the past 12 months, they've experienced 3 isolated and separate episodes of homelessness. So this sort of revolving door where they're able to stay housed for a period of time and either can't afford to maintain that housing, and then they cycle back into homelessness again. Related to the understanding that the longer people get stuck in homelessness, the more of a challenge it is to actually return to a state of being housed, to feel reconnected to the community in a very different way. It also leads us to an understanding as to what Haldeman and Norfolk County would require around the level of intervention that would be needed to help people restabilize in a housed state in the community. And so on the right-hand side of your screen, there's the recognition that if we look at service pathways out of homelessness, what you're actually seeing locally is that there's a higher percentage of individuals and family members that have been experiencing homelessness for a period of time that time has been so long that there's a higher percentage of those individuals that will actually require an intensive level of support and housing location and potentially a deeper subsidy in order for them to return to a housed state. So 52% of unaccompanied adults would actually require a high intensity program such as supportive housing, permanent supportive housing. You also have in terms of family members, so there were 10 families that were enumerated, 5 in Norfolk County and 5 in Haldeman County, and 60% of those families would actually benefit from a high intensity program. Throughout North America, if we look at homelessness in families, it's generally about 10% of families that would require a high intensity program. So obviously these families have been stuck in homelessness and instability and experiencing trauma for quite some time. When we look at transition age youth, so 18 to 24 years of age, 40% of those young people would again require and benefit from a high intensity program that would help them be rehoused and stabilized in that housing. And that's it.
Questions? Sorry. To the presenter? No questions? Okay. I guess I'll have to read this. There are 2 numbers here that should be there, I guess. we have two presentations. Where there's right after this, we have one another one. Word. Which one is it? Heidi, will you come forward?
Mr.
From
Chair, yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. As Ms. Givens said, the staff report is a cover report that to the consultant's report. So at this point, if there are any questions on the staff report, we'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? There doesn't seem to be any, so we go forward. No questions? Sorry? A motion. Do we have a motion to that already or not? We have to come forward with it.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So at this point, there's that staff report HS 1925, and we're looking for a motion from committee to receive for information.
Okay, Councilor Rabbit, Michele, all those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to the next one, which it will be? Cubit, yes. I know where it is. Where is it? Yeah, I've got it here. Sorry. The next one is Graham Cubit and Leah Longan? Sorry? Okay. Indwell, affordable housing at the Norfolk County Inn. Staff report HS, so I guess 35. Come forward and make your presentation.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and councillors. Thank you very much for having us back to speak to you. We're very excited to be here today. My name is Graham Cubit. I'm the Director of Projects and Development, and my colleague Leah Logan, who's the manager of our programs here in Haldeman, Norfolk. And a few months ago, we were here and talking about the Norfolk Inn, and we're excited to be back and speaking to the report from staff that you have regarding Norfolk Inn. I'll let Leah speak to a few things, and then I'll touch on a few other points and just give you an update from what's been happening with the project.
Hi, everybody. It seems like a long time ago, but last fall, our community came together. Our business and our economic development leaders brought us into a conversation about how we could contribute to Simcoe's downtown revitalization, how we could assist in the transformative change of the Norfolk Inn in a way that would best serve the community. And knowing what we've done at Hamilton Hall, we knew we could do this again. As a grassroots organization, we understand what an impact the transformation of a building can have on a community, how creating a positive environment deeply strengthens one's health, wellness, and belonging, and how building its tenants its buildings and its tenants can become positive ambassadors for not only the community's wellness, but economic growth as well. Therefore, based on our experience, we developed an innovative strategy that we knew we could implement with the assistance of this community and its members. A strategy that would not only tackle the need for affordable housing in this community, but become a strategic investment in the economic renewal of Simcoe's downtown core and the whole of Norfolk County. So on December 3rd, we took ownership of the Norfolk Inn. And since that time, we've put substantial amounts of time and energy and resources towards cleaning up that building and rehousing the 41 tenants that were living there at the time. I am very proud to say that my team has spent over 400 hours in that building, rehousing the folks in that building. And as of yesterday, we have found housing for every one of them. Yes, I know, it's great. So it really warms my heart to know that some of the kindest people that I've met in that building, who have dealt with unbelievable hardships and living in rooms that were not suitable for any human to live in, have been able to overcome the hardest and the harshest barriers to finding housing and are now living in safer places that they can call home. We told this community and council that we would have everyone rehoused by summer, and we have met that goal. So over the last 6 months, we have realized that with this strategy, our dream and our goal for this building is not just ours, it's the community's as well. Not only have community agencies come alongside to assist in rehousing tenants, but neighbors, strangers, community members, news agencies have joined our vision, supporting and donating furniture and donating clothing, pots, pans, anything that we need to make sure that we could rehouse our tenants, but also prepare this building for renovation. We've had hundreds of people through this building, and they've come to say goodbye to the old and welcome the new opportunities that we bringing forward. And I think that this is only gaining momentum. So at the end of April, we hosted an extremely successful last call event at the Norfolk Inn, organized by our community and actually some of you guys as well. This event launched us into the beginning of our Norfolk Inn fundraising campaign. And I am so excited to say that as of today, in a month and a half, we've been able to raise $250,000 in community donations for this project. And you know, a lot of the time I just ask, how is this possible? How in a month can we have made this possible? But it's because this community believes not only in our project at the Norfolk Inn, but they know that this project will transform the downtown core and the economic prosperity this project will bring for the community as well.
Thanks, Leah. The opportunity to be involved in the Norfolk Inn project has also brought us into a lot of conversations with our local business leaders, with the BIA, the Chamber of Commerce, of which we're a member, Venture Norfolk, which is our main financer so far for the project, and indeed we're actually Venture Norfolk's largest portfolio, but also with SCORE, the Southern Ontario Region Economic Development Corporation. And what we're hearing is a common theme of housing, and affordable housing is a major issue across this region. And our opportunity as Ontario's leading developer of affordable housing, and indeed probably rural Ontario's largest developer of rental housing, is that we have an opportunity here in Norfolk County that's unlike many other communities, that we have a community that's coming together, our donor community, our business community, our civic community, to say how can we actually solve these problems. And so we're excited that, you know, we have a lot of experience building buildings, and every one of our projects creates 40 jobs. Every one of our projects creates long-term economic impact because we employ people. We're looking at probably having a staff of 5 for Norfolk Inn. But it's not just those short-term jobs that are construction, it's the people who are investing in our communities, so that long-term, people like Leah, people like Mandy, people like Deb, people like John, who already work here, continue to have these opportunities in our community. We know that a lot of younger people who come out of great careers or great educations are looking for opportunities to stay closer to working at home. And we see that we're often an employer of choice in the communities that we're working in. So when we came to this building last December, as Leah said, when we took the keys and took over ownership, we knew we had our challenges ahead of us, but we knew that as a community we could actually pull through and make this possible. So we're very excited to have been working with our architects, working with our design team, working with our community to come up with a plan we know is going to work with your support. And we're very excited to have your support today of the staff report that's before you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have a related staff report. Does staff have any brief comments to add to the, sorry? Oh, I should ask somebody, are there any questions for you? I'm sorry. Okay, would you come back? Is there any questions for the, go ahead, Mr. Michele.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. Logan and Mr. Cubitt, just want to thank you for your presentation, and I think you're aware of the great support you get from council with your good work. Just wanted to point out that one of the things I took away from the staff report in particular is that for each affordable housing unit, each one that's built creates between 2 and 2.5 new jobs in the creation of it. The existence of affordable housing also saves so many costs on so many other very expensive items that we have. For example, it reduces healthcare costs, it reduces costs for the justice system, and it also reduces the cost of maintaining temporary shelters that we would otherwise have to have if we didn't have these excellent affordable housing units and developments. So I want to thank you very much for that.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the deputies for trying to restore the former Norfolk Inn. I just want to get to the details here. Am I reading this correctly that you're looking for $250,000 a year from Norfolk County for 20 years? That's $5 million over 20 years of taxpayers' money to whatever programming you put into the Norfolk Inn. So after 20 years, who owns the building?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So Indwell is the owner of the building currently and would continue to be the owner of the building. Our experience is that the projects that we create are indefinitely in the public interest. We're a registered charity, so if we wanted to sell the building, especially if there's a contribution agreement or any kind of legal structure, obviously, that any kind of funding would come with, our assets have to be dispersed and used for charitable purposes. So whether that be transferred to another not-for-profit or another charity, etc. That's how any kind of dissolution of the organization would be. But our goal and our experience is that the programs that we operate are here for the permanent benefit of the community. And so after the 20 years, we would continue to operate it as an affordable housing program.
Okay, just to follow up. So you'd have 32 units here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes,
they
that's
would basically be subsidized $7,812.50 a year per unit.
Yes.
To make up the $250,000. Okay. That's all I have for now. Thanks.
Any further? Councillor Rabbit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, thank you for your deputation. I've had a lot of involvement with Indwell in this project, and I am a champion of affordable housing, and I really want to express my support, but I also want to be very honest, and I feel I would feel somewhat remiss if I didn't touch on the finance aspect of it. This is an incredibly large ask. In getting involved with this project, I was under the impression that this wasn't a project that could be done in the private sector. There wasn't the stomach for it. It wasn't something the county was willing to undertake on their own accord. The public sector didn't seem to have an appetite because of the dollars involved in renovating this building. And now we have before us a very large ask that will most likely have a levy impact. Appreciating the staff report indicates that funding arrangements would be sought out to mitigate that impact on the levy year over year. But I am really struggling with putting that $5 million over 20 years to this project. I want to be very honest with you in that regard. Through your consultations with our staff, was there any other arrangements that were floated about, whether it be we have the fund for, I'm gonna lose my train of thought here, the I want to say CPI, or the funding that's available for remediating old buildings that we've awarded to a property developer out on the Queensway. That's something, the property tax and improvement grant, I believe is what I'm referring to. There's other funding arrangements, possibly loaning the money at a reduced interest rate. There's a number of different avenues for funding this project, and I don't see them mentioned in our staff report. This is likely a question that's maybe better directed towards staff, but through your process and your consultation, Mr. Cubitt, were those options discussed? Were they not something that we thought was worth pursuing, and that's why you've come, possibly, with such a large ask?
Through you, Mr. Chair, great question, Councillor. Indwell's approach is to have full transparency working with staff and by extension working with you as our civic representatives. Our goal is to create a sustainable, economically efficient, and very highly effective housing program. So I think we did discuss a number of different options. As we know right now, the province is in a period of transition where a lot of the provincial and federal programs that sort of were tied together are in transition. They haven't announced sort of the new going forward programs. I think that would be an opportunity when those details get announced for staff to report back to you on ways to cut the annual ask. What we've seen in other communities is when there's capital available, it's always easiest to spend capital once and sort of guarantee the results for the long term. If the capital is not available, the idea of an annual municipal contribution has been working very successfully in Oxford County, where they passed a bylaw for a 20-year agreement there with us, in order to ensure that the long-term benefits of the housing, affordability, and support stay in place. There are almost innumerable ways to work this out, but I think that the underlying issue is how do we cover all of the costs, how do we cover all of the supports to put in place a very stable long-term housing program. We heard from the previous delegation around the costs of homelessness. We know those very well, but we also know that there's economic costs to a building like the Norfolk Inn. Being in private ownership as it was, there was no better future for it under the previous ownership. And there are more of those landlords out there who look for these kind of buildings, so we want to keep it in a public benefiting ownership and actually develop it to what we know it can become. I think we'd be very open to working with staff on finding any kind of scenario that actually reduces an impact on the municipal levy, that if we can bring federal dollars, if we can bring provincial dollars. There's lots of different organizations like the Federation of Municipalities of Ontario or different other organizations that actually fund different things. So there's creativity for sure that's possible to go into this, and it would require some more time to come up with different things. I think from the staff report, the intention would be, and I won't speak to this on behalf of staff, but the way we read it is, let's look every year to find what sources of funding, or if we can find capital up front that would automatically reduce that requirement, let's do that, and let's do that together. I think that would be our perspective on that.
Okay, Councillor Hoffman?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to make a few points, and I wholeheartedly support this endeavor. And in regards to my colleagues, I mean, it's remiss if, obviously, I mean, we have to be fiscally responsible. But when we look at the investment of $250,000 a year, and the total being, what was it, $5 million, correct? When I look at what the previous state of that building cost this county in terms of development, in terms of the downtown core, and I think that you have come, not we, we're riding in on your coattails here, that you've come in at a time where we can bring back some life and some pride of ownership to the downtown core. And it's obviously, anytime that we can invest in the most vulnerable citizens in our community, that has my full support. It's the right of every human to have a home, to have a place, whether it's something that they rent, something that they own. But it's a right, and it's something that I think many in our community don't understand if they haven't experienced that. So my piece is that for how this will move the needle in terms of Norfolk County, in so many ways, I can offer my full support to this. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor?
Thank you, Chair Geisens. Through you, first, thank you guys for everything you do. It's incredible. I cross the street from it every day, and what an absolute improvement. I'd like to know how much per room is being subsidized at Hamilton Hall? Is there a similar scenario set up for the residents there?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So at Hamilton Hall, it's a little bit of a different situation because there was around $2 million in capital funding that was available at the time through a federal provincial program called the Investment in Affordable Housing. That obviously helps cover capital costs up front, and so there's not an ongoing financing obligation with that money. Right now, the federal provincial program that program has sort of wound down, or at least it's in flux, and so that opportunity isn't there. We do receive, I think it's $160,000 a year in annual funding, which is through some of the provincial homelessness funds, especially given some of the interrelation we have with the county's affordable housing or homelessness prevention efforts. And so between the different programs that we're tying into, we've been able to come up with a creative and enduring financial picture for Hamilton Hall. I think, though, that it's an example of the kind of creativity that has to happen in smaller municipalities is more complicated, but it's more interesting than in larger municipalities. We're in Hamilton, we're in Mississauga, we're in London, where per capita they get a lot more money from the federal provincial programs, or like Mississauga levies very high development charges for affordable housing. So they can do different things capital-wise than we can do here in Norfolk County. It's this kind of creativity, though, to find the resources that are available and to weave them together into a sustainable economic package that I think makes very enduring results for this community. And I think that that's where, maybe to the earlier question, let's look at these things together with staff and find more resources that are out there in the community that we can apply to the budget.
Further? Councillor Columbus.
Do you have a business plan written up for this particular project?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we have a business plan for the project. It takes into consideration, obviously, the capital costs for the project, sort of the ongoing operating costs, everything, utilities, services, supports, etc. One of the key things that we want to make sure is that every one of our projects stands alone, so that it's not, dependent on some other project to be, that its existence isn't dependent on some other project succeeding, so that it can be very stable and sustainable for this community.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Heidi, do you want to talk about the staff report HSS 1933 Affordable Housing Development Proposal, former Norfolk Inn building?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report that is before committee this afternoon represents the results of conversations that have occurred between Indwell and Norfolk County staff representing the Health and Social Services, Development and Cultural Services, and Financial Services divisions regarding the redevelopment of the Norfolk Inn in downtown Simcoe. The Norfolk Inn redevelopment is an important project for Norfolk County for a number of reasons. The current unsafe housing that is on the second floor would be recreated into 32 modest and affordable rental housing units. This would have a direct and positive impact on the affordable housing crisis in Simcoe for single non-senior adults who are currently waiting 8 to 10 years for affordable housing. Tenants who have been living unsupported and experiencing challenges with daily living in the community would be supported on site at the Norfolk Inn by a multidisciplinary and professional team of housing support workers, mental health and addiction support workers, and nurses who specialize in working with people who have complex needs. This type of supportive housing is proven to reduce costs in the areas of emergency response, hospitalization, and criminal justice. Brand new commercial space would be created in downtown Simcoe. A derelict building located on a main corner in downtown Simcoe would be completely revitalized from top to bottom, having positive impacts on the downtown core. And this is an opportunity for Norfolk County to work with a developer who has proven that they can successfully partner with municipalities in the area of both affordable housing development and downtown revitalization. Representatives of Indwell are respectfully requesting an annual operating grant from Norfolk County in the amount of $250,000 per year for a period of 20 years, beginning in the year 2020, to support the redevelopment and ongoing operation of the new Norfolk Inn. This investment will support the leveraging of over $6 million in investment from the Canada Mortgage and Housing National Co-Investment Fund and ongoing funding from the Ministry of Health for Specialized Services, making it a true partnership between a private not-for-profit developer and the federal, provincial, and municipal levels of government. As was stated, it will also create 40 full construction jobs during the time of the redevelopment and 5 full-time permanent jobs within the building. As noted above, research has shown, and as Councillor Michelli noted, research has shown that investment in affordable housing with support leads to direct savings in other community costs in the areas of emergency services such as paramedics and policing, healthcare and hospitalizations, and criminal justice. Pages 2 and 3 of the staff report further detail the research in this area. It is estimated that for every dollar spent on mental health and addiction support, $10 is saved in costs related to the health and justice systems, and that for every $10 spent on housing and support for those who are chronically homeless, $21.72 is saved in costs related to health care, the justice system, shelters, and other social supports. Based on this data, the potential savings associated with the redevelopment of the Norfolk Inn is estimated at $14 million. Staff are making a strong commitment to Council to continue to aggressively seek out funding opportunities from higher levels of government to cover the cost of the Norfolk Inn annual operating grant. These efforts will be reported to Council each year during budget deliberations. And as Mr. Cubitt noted, we have talked about various options of county support, and what we are here asking for is a county commitment, a long-term commitment to the project, so that the developers know that they have a sustainable funding model with which that they can go forward with the development. The Norfolk Inn redevelopment is an important community project from the perspectives of affordable housing, economic development, and downtown revitalization. The county is being presented with an opportunity to invest in this project and support a venture that will have an incredibly positive and long-lasting impact on the community, and staff would respectfully ask for Council's support of Indwell's request. And Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Councilor Rabbits.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Heidi Van Dyke. Thank you very much for this report. You have followed Council's direction, in my opinion, to a T and worked with Indwell very closely to provide us with this information. I want to acknowledge that fact. Again, I do struggle with the dollar amount in there. I want to ask you if you're aware of, or if you've been communicated the total ballpark of the project, what the build would cost at the end of the day. I believe I've been in some discussion that is in the ballpark of $8 million. If Mr. Cubitt would like to maybe take the stand and just to clarify that point, if you don't have that information readily available. I think it's very important when we're discussing the finance of this project to know, what the top of that thermometer is if we were to fill up it right to the very top. And I believe it's in the range of $8 million. Would you be able to provide that information?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Rabbits, the information that I have, and if there is updated information, I would also defer to the representatives of Indwell to correct me if I'm incorrect. But the information that I have is that the total capital expenditure for the redevelopment is just over $7.4 million. And then the annual operating cost, so the annual cost to operate the building and provide support to the tenants and the housing is $1,029,677. That's the pro forma budget that I have.
Thank you for that information. And further to that point, I feel that a partnership is 50-50. And if I were to crunch some numbers here, if we're looking at $200,000 over the course of 20 years, that approximates to about $4 million for the duration of the project. I feel a little bit more comfortable with that number And I just wanted to kind of put that thought out there because I'm going to direct the question back to you, Heidi, for an opportunity to maybe explain where the $250,000 over 20 years came from. How exactly did you arrive at that number? And what would the justification be for that number? And what would the impact be if we were to follow what I have suggested as a reduced number of 200,000, total $4 million? What would the impact of that be on the project? I guess I've asked you 3 questions very rapidly, just to summarize. How did we arrive at the dollar value on our paper, and what would the impact be with what I have just suggested?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Rabbits, when we look at affordable housing development and how it is funded, in order for the project to be viable from both a capital perspective and an ongoing operating perspective, a public contribution is required because the developer is not able to charge the level of rent that if it was a private market rent development, developers are able to charge a level of rent in order to cover all of their costs. In an affordable housing development, the rent is at least 80%. That's the max, 80% of the average market rent for that area. So there's a gap there between what the developer can collect from the tenants and maintain the affordability and what they require in order to have a viable project that doesn't go into a deficit position. So in our conversations with Indwell, the requirement to do that is the ask that is before you tonight, which is $250,000 over for the next 20 years. To answer the second question related to what would happen if the ask was less than that, I'm really not in a position to speak on behalf of Indwell in terms of the impact, but certainly we as staff would go back and have further conversations with them about if we could make that work and how we could make that work to see this project move forward.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I realize that there is a known need to assist some of our vulnerable seniors in the community. And I just think that $250,000 over 20 years for a total of $5 million in the end, and we would not own the building. I just don't see this as being reasonable. We have a number of people that are what I consider, and I think everybody considers them, the working poor. You know, they send their kids to school with skimpy lunches. So you see that out there, the fridges are empty, and I can't see having our tax dollars, which would be about 0.25% on the tax levy, to go to this kind of project. Thank you.
Treasurer James.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a great discussion, and as treasurer, I want to make sure council has all the information when making a major decision like this. There is an assessment on this building currently of less than $1 million, and that tax revenue from that assessment is relatively small for the size of the building. Indwell is putting between $6 and $8 million into this piece of property, which I believe we would all agree would dramatically increase the assessment on this building. So therefore, there would be increased tax revenue as a result. Now, I'm not an assessor, that's MPAC's job. However, using the lower of the two, between 6 and 8 million, if they assess that building at $6 million, then over that same period, we would generate another $2.5 million of tax revenue. That's growth. That's not a bigger share of the pie. That is actually growth that we would put into our budget. So I wanted to just make sure when council's making this decision that they understood there's a net effect on that. Yes, it's a $250,000 investment each year. However, we are generating more tax revenue as a result.
Further? Councillor Taylor?
Thank you, Chair Geisens. Through you to staff, how likely is it that these grants will be out there? Like currently, are there grants that you can apply for that would cover that 250 for this budget cycle, perhaps the next budget cycle?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Taylor, there is a report that is going to the next Health and Social Services Advisory Committee that will explain the new affordable housing funding that is coming from the federal and provincial governments. And staff are currently working on the investment plan for that. That could be an option for council to consider. We have our funding allocation for this year and a planning allocation for the next 2 years. So we've been told by the provincial government what we're definitely getting for this year, which is just over $750,000. And we have been told what we can expect for the next 2 years. And so that is available. In terms of our homeless prevention funding, there is a report coming to council regarding the investment plan for that as well. Our funding for this year has been held at last year's levels. We are expecting an increase in that funding for 2021. So as the funding stream that we use to fund the operating grant for Hamilton Hall, the housing with related supports, this project would meet the criteria of that as well. We would look at that along with all of the other homeless prevention services that we provide. We would look at our affordable housing funding along with all of the other opportunities that we have in the community, and we would be actively working with our federal and provincial partners to look at other funding opportunities.
Thank you, and if I may, with one more question through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Johnson. So assuming that the grants are successful and we're able to use that money, this wouldn't appear as a levy impact?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. If there's a grant opportunity that would offset these costs, then it would not have a levy impact.
And further, if another option becomes available to fund this project, how would that be communicated to council if this is passed tonight?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Taylor, if another funding opportunity became available before next year's budget, we would let council know as soon as we knew. Otherwise, the commitment that staff has made through this staff report is to highlight this for council every year at budget time so that council is very aware of how much is on the levy and how much we have funded through other avenues.
Thank you.
Councillor Huffman?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to respond in terms of one of my colleagues' comments. By not supporting this and supporting the individuals who are at risk in our community, it's not going to put money into someone else's pocket. You know, by not committing this $250,000 a year, if that ends up being what it is per year, unless other sources come along, we weren't going to be taking that $250,000 and putting it towards like individuals who are in a different socioeconomic group. We're not going to be putting it towards their lunches or things like that. So to deny one in regards as an argument for the other doesn't fly for me.
Councillor Van Passen?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for staff. There's other programs that this county supports for affordable housing, like through the Housing Authority or corporation. We have programs where actually cut a check to help subsidize. You know, $250,000 a year is $651 per unit subsidy every month for one room. what are the costs on some of the other type, or like what does it cost to supply affordable housing through the Housing Authority or Corporation? I have to ask Councillor Rabbiter what the official name of that is. I keep forgetting. The Howland Northing Housing Corporation. Yeah, that's a wholly owned subsidiary. What does it cost per month on average to supply affordable units that method? Or, you know, what's the average that we are subsidizing those in need for a short time? Do you have some options on that? And further, have you looked at more options, again, like Councillor Rabbit has said, about, you know, the tax incentive program, rather than just a straight out grant? Are there other ways to sort of get to the same way in a different way?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Van Passen. So to answer the first question, within the housing services budget, the current municipal levy contribution is just over $2.5 million, and the treasurer can correct me on that if I am mistaken. Those are the mandated payments, operating subsidies to the Haldeman Norfolk Housing Corporation and to our 10 private nonprofit housing providers. The way that rent subsidy works for those providers is that if the tenant is a social assistance recipient, they pay according to the scale, the rent scale. So for example, a single person who is on Ontario Works, their rent in accordance with provincial legislation is set at $85 a month. And then the operating subsidy pays up to the market rent level, which could be in the neighborhood of $650 to $750 per unit per month. So that's how we get to the total of $2.5 million a year for those housing providers. The difference with this housing development, which I think is key, is the element of the supports and the higher intensity supports from the multidisciplinary team that I talked about in my presentation. So the goal is really to provide the supports to the tenants that are necessary in order to stabilize their housing and help them to achieve stability in other areas of their lives. So that's just a bit of a comparison between the Norfolk Inn project as a supportive housing development and our other not-for-profit housing that we support on an annual basis. To answer the second question about other options.
Could I just get some clarification on that? You said 2.5 million levy dollars. Is that Norfolk share, and then there's a Haldeman share, and then there's also provincial funding, and the whole program is closer to 6 million?
So, Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Van Passen, the treasurer has confirmed for me that that is just Norfolk County share.
The cost of the entire program?
This year, our annual budget, I'll just ask the treasurer to confirm as well, but is in the neighborhood of $7 million. So we do get considerable funding from our federal and provincial partners for our housing and homelessness, affordable housing and homelessness programs. So to answer the second question around other types of partnerships, and I can defer to Ms. Dusling as well to talk about the community improvement program, but we have talked with Indwell about the community improvement program. We have talked about other options within the building. What we're looking at is that, as Graham had said and Leah had said, that sustainable long-term commitment so that they know that there is a long-term funding commitment that they can move forward with the project. So that's another difference between some of those one-time funding pots versus the ongoing commitment. that provides the sustainability.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Heidi, the financing that goes from the county to the Hamilton Hall location, do we have historic information on grants that may have helped that funding stream? Is that something you'd be able to demonstrate?
So, Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Martin, when Hamilton Hall was developed, we had capital funding that was available through the Investment in Affordable Housing program, and we had $2 million available in capital funding, and Indwell was the successful bidder in an RFP for that funding. So they received a capital grant from the federal and provincial affordable housing program in the amount of $2 million. There is an operating agreement with Indwell for Hamilton Hall under the Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative, or the CHIPPY funding, under the area of housing with related supports. That's 100% provincial funding in an amount of $160,000. So that is one of the funding pots that at this point in time, our CHIPPY funding is fully committed. Moving forward, our planning allocation for next year's CHIPPY funding, we are anticipating an increase. So looking at all of our homelessness prevention services together, this could potentially be a project that we could look at some funding from CHIPPY. But again, we'd have to look at it in relation to all of our other programs. There are no municipal levy dollars that go to Hamilton Hall.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I too would like to see from staff alternate options brought forward, that we can fund this development and support this development in a meaningful way, whether that's through tax incentives or grants or permit funding. Has there been any discussion around a partnership through the Haldeman Norfolk Housing Corporation on this at all?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Martin, there hasn't been a representative of the Housing Corporation who has expressed an interest in a partnership to me. I'm not aware of whether or not any representatives of the Housing Corporation have communicated with Indwell about an interest in a partnership, and I see that Mr. Cubitt is shaking his head no.
Okay, I'm not an expert at all, and I just maybe want to float this idea out to you, and I don't know enough about the Housing Corporation in partnership with other things, but I would like to see creative ideas explored, maybe something including evaluating the equity of the Housing Corporation. Is there something that is there a blend of the programs that can be brought forward, additional options on paper? And, well, more than on paper, I want to throw my full support behind this more than ever before. This group is doing amazing things, and I appreciate them and I value them. But the reality is that we're not the most financially healthy municipality around, and I too struggle with the value and the duration. And I understand why they and staff would like to see a long-term commitment. Believe me, I get it. But for me, I'm really struggling with it, and I want to get behind this, and I want to find meaningful ways to support it, but I don't know that this is it for me, if I can throw that out there. So thank you for the information.
Councillor Columbus?
One more question, Mr. Chairman, to Heidi. What is the turnover of these units? Like, would there be 32 units with permanent residents till forever? Or once the person gets well and can live on their own, do they move out, or do they just stay there and get subsidized this $7,000 a year?
So, Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Columbus, these are permanent units. The goal would be that as people get well, they gain more independence. And I'm sure that the representatives of Indwell would agree with me, and I see them nodding their heads yes, that absolutely the goal for the tenants is that as people are supported at an appropriate level, that And once they achieve housing stability, then they achieve stability in other areas of their physical health, their mental health, their well-being. They reconnect with their community and with families, and it makes it easier for people to achieve that level of independence and then move into a less supportive, more independent environment.
Okay. Counselor, can you give us the recommendations, and then we'll look for a mover and a seconder. Sorry? We got another one? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I have one more question that I would actually like to direct to our county CAO. We've heard a wealth of information from our staff members this night as we've dissected this report and asked for a little bit more in-depth information. And I know that Mr. Slang has some experience in healthcare and in a variety of different municipalities, and I wanted to provide him an opportunity either to either corroborate much of the information that we've already received, or if there's anything in addition that you wanted to add. Very big and exciting project for Norfolk County, and I want to provide our county CAO an opportunity to maybe to put his stamp on it and explain his position at this point in time.
Through you, Chair. Basically, I signed off on the report. I did meet with Indwell, and I knew that how important the sustainable funding was. We as staff will search out any other grants as we go year by year, but I could see their need to see some sustainable operating costs covered off. I mean, if you see what the facility looks like today and what it could look like tomorrow, along with all the other supports, we did support it. I did sign off on it. But really, this is a council decision to say, is this something you want to invest in? And understanding that the province should be funding a lot of these programs. But it is something that you want to see in your center of Simcoe, and it really comes down to your decision.
So, Renpassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can't support this in its current form, but I thought I heard one of our staff say that later on this year, the federal and provincial guidelines are going to be coming out on how some of this funding and possibly the capital funding is coming forth. I'd like to see a bit more comparison information on, how we're spending $7 million subsidizing housing otherwise, how it compares to the per unit cost here. I'd like to look at other options, like maybe a new tax incentive program where we just waive their taxes completely, because if they didn't fix it, they wouldn't be paying the taxes in the first place, so we're not really giving away any real money. But I think I'm not willing to support this as of today. So I wonder if we send it back to staff, or we call it deferring it, send it back, maybe we can get some more information on possibly that the federal and provincial governments will look at funding the capital. Maybe we could help Indwell a bit on a joint application on the capital side rather than ongoing. Maybe there's other options out there, but maybe I'll just ask that move it for a deferral till after the summer break or at some point in the fall, or when they have more information. And at least that doesn't throw it away by getting it voted down immediately.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the CEO just asked me if there's no questions. Just on deferral, the deferral motion takes precedence, and then the only thing that is debatable is what information you want back on the deferral or the time frame of the deferral. So right now we have, I have the matter be deferred for staff for further information analysis and be brought back in the fall of 2019.
Putting that forward. A mover and a seconder? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Shelley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have to, in this case, I would concur with Councillor Van Passen's notion to defer, because I think that we will be able to make a much better decision with some actual factual information in front of us. And the motion as it is now, where it requires that staff be directed to then seek out federal and provincial funding sources. Once we've already passed this, it doesn't really incentivize anybody to really dig deep and find those sources. So I would rather have information about the possibilities before we make that final decision. So I would support a deferral. Thank you.
We have a mover and a seconder for that? Yes? You have something? Mover and seconder. All those in favor? That is carried. It was. Show hands again, please. Or defer. 5 to 3. Carried. Heidi, okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could just ask for clarification so that I am very clear about what information council is looking for. So what I heard was that you would like to see a comparison in terms of funding levels between current programs and this development proposal, and that you would like information about other options, including income tax, or not income tax, sorry, property tax, waivers, permit fees, that sort of thing. And also information about federal and provincial funding programs that might be available. I just want to clarify that that's the information that council is seeking, and ask if there is anything else that I can provide.
Martin? Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Heidi, that sounds good to me, but I would like to just bounce this back quickly to you. Is there something you feel as though we are missing that would be beneficial to come back in a report to council? I would like to see as many creative options as possible and meaningful support.
Mr. Chair, through you to council, I would also suggest that it would be very important for council to know what the future of the project would be should municipal support not be available. And that's not something that I can immediately answer. If council would like that information tonight, we could ask the representatives from Indwell, or that is something that I can include in our future discussions.
Not sure what we...
Mr. Chair, if it assists, there's a week before council ratification, so if the group desires to submit a further correspondence or a letter to council, they may do so in order to provide further information prior to ratification.
Okay. It's been voted on. I think we're going to take a 20-minute break.
Thanks.
On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Up north, on a strip of sandy soil, lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road, bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just a place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road, bound to be back for more. Of North on a strip of sandy soil. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, the southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of North on a strip of sand.
Time to get back together. I have moved by Councillor Van Passen, seconded by Ian Rabbits, that the committee move into closed session at 6:50. PM pursuant to section, how come we have those two of them? One here and then the same thing again? Huh? Okay. Pursuant to section 239 2B, F, and D of the Municipal Act 2001 SO 25 as the subject matter pertains to personal matter about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, labor relations or employee negotiations, and that the advice that is subject to the solicitor-client privilege, including communication necessary for that purpose. All those in favor? That is carried. There you go. Now we go the other way again.
On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just a place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger along. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of North, on a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know.